Hi everyone and welcome to Hit the Apex this week. It's a return to the European heartland for Formula 1 Round 5 of the Championship. Got plenty to discuss with Supercars and the World Endurance Championship as well last week, and we'll talk all things the Spanish Grand Prix as well. I'm Duarte as always, joined by Baden, and into the fifth round of the Championship already. We're back into the European heartland and Barcelona. It's always a pivotal race in every championship, given the fact that it offers a true gauge for the first time where everyone is at.
Yeah, as ever you come to Spain and it's like the whole championship resets itself, and a lot of teams you really see holding off on those upgrades. They tend to just hold station, those flyaways, be a bit conservative, and as it stands, very evenly poised. So you come here and, I don't know, Spain, it's never been the most exciting event, but it just does offer, as you say, that gauge of really what we can expect for the balance of the season.
Yeah, so we can expect a lot of upgrades from the teams coming this weekend. It's of course where the teams did all their pre-season testing as well, so it's probably one that they know off the back of their hands by now, and also we should see everyone just get straight into it and try and get those new upgrades to work. So as far as the championship is concerned, so from last time out, Baku, that surprise result with Lewis Hamilton winning, 4 points between it now, with Hamilton jumping to the top of the table, Sebastian Vettel there in second. And you remember there last year in Barcelona, these two were neck and neck in the race. Hamilton eventually pipped Sebastian Vettel to that one. So it's a very close contest at the moment as far as both their cars are concerned. Will we see some more wheel-to-wheel stuff between these two? I hope so for this weekend.
Oh, you never know. Based on the first four races, it's really it's a quirk of how the championship lies for now that Hamilton is in fact leading. You'd consider Vettel to have had by far the superior form to date, and Ferrari have that edge there. So I think that for Hamilton, he'll really want a true clean weekend where he asserts himself from the Friday and feels like he's perhaps dominated from start to flag. But on the basis of what we've seen again, Valtteri Bottas, we can't really write him off. He's the real dark horse, as you did allude to last time, and again to an extent Kimi Räikkönen.
Yeah, so going to Valtteri Bottas, he's been the more consistent driver, you could argue, this season of the two Mercedes guys. But we know with Lewis in the past that once he gets that win under his belt, or that good result, he gets his mojo back. Could that win in Baku, even though it was a surprise win for him, could that be what initiates his mojo for this season? And will we see him go on a run here, or will we see Bottas use that, I guess, frustration and that disappointment that he had from that retirement to turn it into a win?
Yeah, it turns so quickly. That's all you need, a little bit of luck, and before you know it, you're away. That slight bit of momentum. One race, you could have it in the bag, or you could just inherit a victory like Hamilton did, and then go on those really ubiquitous charges. We see Hamilton 4 or 5 races at a time when he rediscovers that mojo. So Ferrari will be wary. They'll really want to capitalise this time. The last two have been caught a little bit short here and there, but they'll really just want to capitalise now and head to Monaco, where, dare we say, based on last season, they'll be favourites again. So if they can string together a couple of victories here, they're going to be really the team to beat for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Monaco next one up after this weekend, Barcelona. But speaking of Barcelona, it really doesn't offer consistent results year in, year out. Now, we've seen over the last 13 years, we've had 9 different winners, and before last year, there was an incredible run of drivers. Each year, we basically had a new winner, going back to, I think, 2008 or 2009. So, the only multiple winners, I guess, of the current drivers, we've got Lewis Hamilton, 2 wins with his second one last year. Kimi Räikkönen's won here twice for McLaren and for Ferrari, and of course Fernando Alonso, the home favourite as it were, having won here for Ferrari and for Renault. Sebastian Vettel.
Look, we must add, it'll be the 5-year anniversary of Alonso's last victory in F1. And
yeah,
he might have celebrated last weekend in WEC, but when it comes to F1, it'll be very poignant memories again for him on home soil.
Yeah, not a milestone that I guess he wants to celebrate, but one that we have to look to anyway. So I didn't realise that it's been 5 years since his last F1 victory. So, and Sebastian Vettel, he's not really had the rub of the green here, you could say. He's only won this race once, and that was back in 2011. He's had numerous pole positions, but never seems to get the job done for the win. And I remember 2012 as well, well. It wasn't a very good race for him. That's the one that Pastor Maldonado and Fernando Alonso ended up duking out over. 2013 as well, Fernando Alonso ended up winning that one, even though Red Bull had the dominant car. And then last year, I'm pretty sure Ferrari was on the pole position and didn't end up winning the race. Strategy-wise, Hamilton ended up pipping him. So, it's got to be one that Seb's going to have to tick the box this year, and it'll fuel that championship charge, as you said, keeping up the consistency.
Yeah, I think it's more about substance over style. We'll expect this weekend. It comes down to purely based on what we've had so far. It's been great to see that intervention of safety car with nature taking its course, but it would be great just to get a mono between Ferrari, Mercedes, and you never can discount Red Bull again, but just seeing pure strategy dictating that outcome, and it will really be an appropriate barometer of where they lie when the results are unaffected.
Well, speaking of Red Bull, will the ramifications from Baku spill over for this weekend as well? Of course, Verstappen's won here in 2016, that first race for Red Bull, first career win, and then Ricciardo's not won here before. They had to make that public apology in front of the team, of course, at the factory, Milton Keynes. So, in the same vein as 2010, will we see much change? Will these two come together again, or are they going to play it a bit cautiously?
As ever, internally and externally, they're two completely different contexts, and you can expect that the team is as much, if not more so, Max Verstappen's than it was previously. So, I think Daniel Ricciardo, as we mentioned last week, the marginalisation process is well underway, and he's surely ramping up those negotiations with alternatives, and I think he's really just got to strike out on his own and make his own luck, because on that basis of Baku, where he was clearly the faster driver, apart from that one very odd outlap where he was quite laughably overcut after spending 40 odd laps in Max Verstappen's wake, then he's just got to forget about whatever the strategy might be and just go and take matters into his own hands.
Yeah, just become a renegade essentially with that. So with that marginalisation, you'd hope that it doesn't affect his ability to win a race again this season. You know, Daniel Ricciardo's been pretty consistent as well so far, but again, just issues with the car or, you know, with his teammate is what's plagued him as far as the points go as well. So, you know, no good result here could put him back in that contention, and people were saying that Red Bull are not out of title contention, but it could be moves like that we saw in Baku, outcomes such as that might take Red Bull out of the equation, which again, you know, it's their fault, not anyone else's in that case.
A little bit different to the past few seasons when Red Bull, this point in the season, they've already eliminated themselves from title contention just due to not having the pace. This time they've really been on the ballpark, but they've, especially in the Verstappen camp, not capitalised, and Ricciardo really unfortunate at Bahrain, and then we know what happened a fortnight ago. So for them, this is probably already shaping as last chance saloon. They really need to make the most of whatever the potential is.
Yeah, well, Verstappen I don't think has even reached 20 points yet this season, so that's given the fact that Red Bull have a race-winning car, that's pretty pathetic to look at as far as the points is concerned. So we'll see where Red Bull are come the race and everything. So as far as tyres go and strategy, Red Bull and Mercedes, they're going to be putting the emphasis on the medium tyre this weekend. As you'd expect from Mercedes, it's their favourite tyre. They spent all the testing on that tyre as well, which could make them pretty strong in the race. But given that the conditions are going to be much better than they were in testing, we saw last weekend in Spain for the MotoGP at Jerez how hot it was. If it's the same sort of weather this weekend in Barcelona, then it could perhaps play into Ferrari's favour, because they're bringing 7 sets of super soft tyres, and those softer tyres work better in the heat, and we know Ferrari are the only team that can switch them on better out of the top 3, so that aggressive tyre choice could work in their favour.
And we did see what happened at Bahrain, the way that Vettel, against all the odds, managed to hold on there. Really, we thought he was a sitting duck, whether that was Bottas being a bit meek, not taking that opportunity, or otherwise Vettel just driving the wheels off. So I think Ferrari, they do look as though they've mastered just those little nuances of the Pirelli a lot more than previous seasons, when Mercedes just had that so-called silver bullet to every compound, every strategy.
Yeah, because they had such an advantage anyway, it wouldn't have made much difference where the tyres were concerned. So now that we've got such a little advantage now, or if not any advantage between those teams, little things like the tyres do make a big difference. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, it would be so much better than what it was over in testing. Remember, it was snowing and we had such terrible weather during the Barcelona test where I think one day was actually washed out altogether. So yeah, it'll be conversely different conditions there for them. So that's as far as the top three is concerned for Barcelona, but upgrades, I guess, is going to tell who's the best of the rest. And, you know, that fourth best in the championship, everyone's been talking about Haas at the moment, but they're sitting second last in the title in the Constructors' Championship, or I think third last at the moment. That's on the account of them not scoring the points that their car sort of deserves.
Be almost third, but you look how ridiculous it is.
Well, considering
points lost at Melbourne, then what happened with Grosjean under the safety car at Azerbaijan, they've probably ceded 35, 40 points.
Well,
a
Karen. Yeah, well,
really in that equation.
Well, when you consider Red Bull, how many points they've lost, if Haas didn't lose those points, then they could certainly be up there. And I know you were pretty scathing, as I was, about Roman Grosjean last week, or earlier this week, sorry. But yeah, there was a genuine podium that went begging for them in Baku. So another top result. And Grosjean, of course, one of only two drivers that haven't scored any points this season either. So it's going to be a big race for them to cement that position as what they claim the fourth best car. But Fernando Alonso certainly doesn't hope so, because he's hoping that everyone else's upgrades fail.
Ruthless son of a something these days. He's very much the cynical warrior.
That just, I mean, you wouldn't come out and say that in the media that, I hope everyone else's cars just fail. So that would make them the fourth best. But seriously though, Renault, McLaren, they've both got to make improvements to catch up on where the Haas car is on paper, that is.
On paper, when it comes to the standings, you've got to say Renault have been quietly achieving, and even Sainz got in on the act at Baku, and they're really accumulating those consistent fifths, sixths or sevenths, and no one's really given them much of a rating.
Yeah, but both drivers haven't finished in the points together since Melbourne, so I think if both drivers can score points on the day, it'll be pretty crucial. And of course, Sainz, his home race, and he finished fourth, the best of fourth here a few years ago for Toro Rosso as well. So it's a circuit that he'll love coming back to. He's just as big as Fernando Alonso is in Spain. So, and Nico Hülkenberg as well has had some good results here in the past. So they can do well. And then, you know, Fernando Alonso, of course, in the McLaren is always going to pull a rabbit out of the hat. So being a bit more competitive than he's been over the last few years here, I think with that home crowd behind him, could be looking at, you know, 6th, 7th, or even top 5.
And there's talk about some radical front wing upgrade. What are we going to expect? Is it going to be something completely revolutionary, or just another damn squid?
Oh, I hope it's nothing in the way of Martin Whitmarsh's revolutionary car for 2013. But yeah, we're yet to see this front wing that they'll probably whip out in free practice 1 come Friday. So we'll see if that gives them any advantage. But yeah, it's those three teams, Renault, McLaren and Haas, that are going to be tight there. Force India already saying not to expect much from their upgrades coming this weekend. So what can we expect? You know, Sauber, they've been quietly achieving as well. Charles Leclerc with 6th over the weekend in Baku. Great result for them. I think best result they've had since 2015. So it'll be interesting to see where they are. Williams, lot to talk about again with Williams. It seems they're in the headlines every week these days. But yeah, they're going to be hampered already by a 3-place grid penalty to Sergei Sirotkin from Baku. We'll touch on it in the digest a bit later about the appeal and everything that they did post that race. But we get to see Robert Kubica in action during FP1 as well, which will be good for his first, I guess, in-season test with the Williams team, and see what his assessment of the car is and whether his input will be valued. I know you and I have both said that, yeah, you know, it'll be great to get his opinion on the car, especially in the middle of the season when the temperatures are all right as well. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, just a reference point. It's pretty hard for him to jump in the current predicament and just say, right, he's good or he's crap, because the car sounds like it's a bit of a handful to drive, and it will be a bit of a shame to be missing that first practice session for for work, but hopefully return to here that he is at least able to be respectable. We can't ask for too much. Just he's got only so much to work with that package.
But yeah, perhaps any feedback at this stage will be crucial to get a good gauge of where they exactly are. So it'll be interesting to see what that is and whether they can sort of develop themselves out of the hole that they're in at the moment. So, but yeah, they scored points last time out in Baku. Lance Stroll with 8th position in the end. So at least they're not going to finish the season without any points. Neither of the teams are. But yeah, they've still got a long way to go, don't they?
And you've got to wonder sooner or later there's going to be some sort of shake-up of the entire operation if they're serious about really long-term. It's been a long time coming, this trajectory. We remember that upswing when Martini came on board with Mercedes and we all thought, here's signs of going back to the glory days, but it never eventuated, and now they're almost at one of its lowest ebbs at any time.
That's true, and we'll go straight into the digest here, talking about Williams again, and that protest that they had following Baku with the FIA was dismissed. And the penalty for Sergei Sirotkin stands. So I guess just smacks of desperation. You could probably...
I've got to say, I barely even tuned into this protest. I was thinking, what's it even really for? There was nothing in it, so it was all a waste of time.
Well, the fact that the FIA dismissed it on the grounds that they had no new evidence to produce meant that, yeah, it almost seems like smacks of desperation to save Sergei Sirotkin from instead of starting P20 on the grid, starting 3 places back or whatever from it. So, it just maybe goes to show you where Williams are at the moment. So the fact that they were saying that Alonso wasn't penalised for returning to the pits in an unsafe manner when he was on 2 wheels, or the other clash that happened between Alonso and then Sergei Sirotkin, and then there was another driver involved as well, because the penalty for Sirotkin came because of the collision that he had with Sergio Perez on the first lap. Now, Sirotkin also came together with Alonso as well, which caused him to go onto 2 wheels. So the fact that they're saying that there was nothing done about that or something is another matter. So, yeah, I guess it's just a very complicated one. And as you said, you can't really make much of it. So it means that there's not really much to be made of it.
No, it's just the bluster these days. 90% of it is just teams living in that hope that maybe to mask their own shortcomings, they'll go and put in these appeals and hope somebody clearly doesn't know the regulations, but clearly there was nothing to see here and we move on.
Yeah, we'll move on indeed, and to Mercedes, who are weighing up a customer deal, as Toto Wolff has come out and said, looking at the partnership between Haas and Ferrari, how successful that's been this season. It's attracted a lot of unsavoury attention, and that's only because the fact that, and as I say in my article that I'm about to publish later for tomorrow, is that it's because they're finally getting some results on the board. And if they were just meandering in the midfield and not scoring points, then I'm sure no one would say anything. But the fact that they're actually, for the first time in their 3-year tenure, pretty competitive, that's why we're getting all this attention, and it's prompted Mercedes to think, why don't we do the same thing with a Force India or a Williams?
Yeah, you think really, as much as it's been resisted over the past couple of decades, again, you see F1 back in the 60s and 70s, it was almost the 1 or 2 chassis amongst the entire grid with the manufacturers there, and then the bespoke engine, essentially the Cosworths there. In this case, it'd be a great cost-cutting measure in tandem with 2021's regulations whenever they'll be finalised. But you can see for Ferrari, clearly they've got a good little dynamic with Haas, and now Sauber's come online in the last few months with that Alpha association. So I don't think there's any reason why Mercedes, after now they've been back in F1 in its own right for almost a decade, to pursue its own relationship.
Well, the fact that they're actually considering it and talking about it publicly means one thing, and that's a long-term future perhaps for them in the sport. You wouldn't be contemplating this and then look to exit come 2021. So it's positive to see. And then the key word to take out of it from what Toto Wolff told the F1 website was the fact that creating synergy. And I think synergy is a key word, as I say in the article, is that it's a word that's going to be popping up a lot come 2021 and in the build-up to 2021, creating synergies between teams. Well, don't say it.
Will be synergy, won't it?
Oh, well, don't say it too much, but compared to let's say for example manufacturers and whatnot, and then having those little teams around them, it's good for blooding young drivers, engineers. It's also good for development as well. So they can learn a lot by having their parts on a certain car. So let's say Haas having gearbox and suspension from the Ferrari, it might be something that Ferrari can learn from as well at the same time, or within, I guess, the confines of the regulations. I guess that was the big argument around Haas and Ferrari, is that, they actually literally just copied the car from last year, but the FIA did the investigation and said, no, everything's perfectly legal, they're doing it within the boundaries, which means that everyone else can do the same thing as well.
Yeah, it's the time-honoured tradition of when you see another team, whoever, a customer onto a good thing, if they feel it's too time-consuming, they'll appeal it, and if that's thrown out, then it's up to them really to respond, and in this case, they've got nothing to lose. If there's going to be no clarification that there was a loophole and it's been closed off, they're continuing with it, then Mercedes really, it's great for them just to get that research, that reference point again. I'm sure Ferrari, again, as much as Haas benefits from Ferrari's input, Ferrari does get a lot out of what Haas might develop on those alternative strategies.
Strategies, but also drivers too. And you saying that, like if Grosjean doesn't see out the season, it's most likely he won't be there next season. We'll get, Antonio Giovinazzi, the young driver. They've also got Santino Ferrucci as well, which is another Ferrari Academy driver as their reserve driver for this year. So, it benefits everyone. But I guess when you look at it from a Williams perspective, an independent perspective, where they're in the sport to win championships like they have in the past, they wouldn't want this, because under that sort of customer deal, you can't really, go for championships. But when you look at Williams' predicament, is it, I guess, the only thing that they can do to survive at the moment, you could say. But the thing is, not stay on that trajectory forever, get to the stage where they can get on their feet again, they've got the resources, and then become independent.
All that talk really about long term, whether it does want to be absorbed by someone. We've seen all those individuals buying out minority stakes and shares within the company since it did go public about a decade ago, and you do wonder whether in 5 years' time it will be, whether it wants to accept the way the sport's headed or remain stubborn and, as we just mentioned before, just continue on this sinking trajectory it's been on for really, if we're honest, about 2 decades now since its last title.
Well, yeah, so it's just an alternative way of trying to save them if they want to be saved. That's the question. So that'll be an interesting one to follow, of course. And Toto Wolff even saying that it could be done as early as 2019, having that sort of alliance ready to go with one of the other teams on the grid. So another thing for 2021, Ross Brawn saying that he wants to put an end to grid penalties and not the gearbox penalties. It's the power unit penalties that have been confusing everyone for the last few years, when McLaren and Honda were taking 50 place grid penalties between their drivers. So to have that abolished by 2021, it's a big step, but perhaps one that they're willing to take.
Just in line with already for 2019, those technical regulations, just the simplification, streamlining, and making it as something that most people can understand without dumbing the regs down completely, just so you get to a point where you're not scratching your head for 2 hours after a session or after a little incident and thinking, will they maybe apply some kind of penalty here for next race, will it be this many positions, and having to consult multiple different little parts of the rule book. It really is logical, and Ross Brawn's the man who knows how to put in a good alternative there that everyone will be able to accept.
Yeah, the grid penalties haven't really stopped anyone, as we've said in the past, from changing those multiple power units. I guess if they want to penalise people, then perhaps have some kind of financial penalty for doing it multiple times in a season. I mean, I guess for someone like Honda at that point, who were stuck in a little phase where they needed to change those power units because of reliability problems, I mean, it might get to the stage where, give them a financial penalty, but don't take away from the racing.
Yeah, it's just a shame when you do think about that, particularly some of those more individual performances when they might really have a highlight of the season. You think, oh, well, they're really on here for something, and then it's like, oh, 5 positions, 10 positions, there goes that opportunity.
Well, that was Jenson Button Monaco last year when in his one-off race, when he came back to sub for Fernando Alonso, he qualified 9th, but then got relegated to the back of the grid for grid penalties. So that was pretty annoying and frustrating to see from that perspective, where it does take away from results at times. So
yeah, I think again, no need to rush it, but I think 2021, that's that cut-off point where get everything right in the interim. We already see 2019, which was quite a surprise for those regulations to be pushed through on the technical front, but I want to play the long game, just make sure that it's a really smooth future.
Well, 2021 will be when Formula One is truly Liberty Media's Formula One, you could say, because it's when they get to shape the rules and shape the landscape for what the future will look like. So we hope it's a bright one. Anyway, let's go into supercars now. And the Perth Super Sprint was on last weekend. We'll go over the key talking points, I guess. And Scott McLaughlin, again, clean sweeping the weekend. He did it in Phillip Island. He did it in out west, and that was including the Sunday race where he started from 19th on the grid and still came back to win the race. That was pretty epic to see.
And at this point, as much as after the Australian Grand Prix, we thought that the ball was really very much in Holden's and Triple 8's court, the last couple of weekends, he's made it his title to lose on the current balance. You think that he just looks like he's gaining strength with each race and just so clinical the way he goes about it.
Clinical, yes, but at the same time, I guess it's not over till it's over, as I emphasised over the weekend, saying that he was in this position last year too, but then lost it all on the final day of the championship in Newcastle. So he's definitely learned a lot, and you can see it in the way he's racing as well. So from P19 on the grid, he was able to out-strategize the other drivers with the help of Ludo Lacroix, but also on track as well. He just looked so mature out there, and he wasn't showing those problems that someone who's going after the championship for the first time would show, or Max Verstappen, for example. So McLaughlin really showing he is the complete driver at the moment out there, and it's going to take a lot for him to be stopped by the guys at Triple 8 or anyone else who's got designs on taking this championship.
And it must be said he's also highlighting Fabian Coulthard's shortcomings certainly this season, and really be incumbent on the Kiwi there to get his act together, because they'll be, as we I think mentioned last week, they won't be sitting around for too long. TP being happy if he's not consistently in the top 5 with McLaughlin. If he can come from the rear of the grid to a victory, they'll be expecting similar from Coulthard, and they'll be sizing up a Mostert or someone if Mostert in a Tickford, which we'll emphasise in a moment, they're still probably not where they want to be. He'll be looking at his own options.
Certainly so, and I guess moving it on, another great comeback drive on the Sunday was of Craig Lowndes, the master of Perth, who's got the most wins of anyone at that circuit, but he was 25th on the grid on the last row of the grid, and he came back to take a podium at the end of the day, so great form from Lowndes too. I guess, again, best of the Triple 8 guys, you could say, even though they had the pole position, the front row lockout, the Red Bull cars, Whincup and Van Gisbergen on the Sunday, and then Van Gisbergen a podium on Saturday, a circuit which he doesn't usually do too well at Perth. So that was a good result for him. But yeah, Lowndes really in this hunt, you could say, for the championship. He's sitting 4th. He's about 150 points behind, and he's got a car under his belt now that he knows he's confident with, that he can win races and get on the podium. So if he can keep this up, then yeah, he might definitely be a player come the end of the season.
Yeah, just that dynamic with his new engineer. He finally seems sorted and has that confidence. You mentioned since Tasmania, he's looked really rejuvenated. I think just that consistency last year was very characteristic of some of his performances, but this time around he's almost at the moment their strongest driver, you could say, across the balance of the season, just when it comes to converting it on race day. And if you can jag another win or two, especially before the mid-season break, then and suddenly he's going to be legitimately someone after. Everyone had really written him off after last season to be in that hunt.
Well, it was a big year for him to respond, really. It would be the gauge as to whether we'd see him for a few more years after this, or would he finally call time on his illustrious career, you could say, that he has had, even though championship-wise he hasn't had the success that maybe Jamie Whincup or a Mark Scaife have had. He's had, more than a century of wins under his belt, 6 Bathurst titles as well to his name. So yeah, he's got a lot of accolades in that career, which has spanned more than 3 decades now. Almost, well, it'll be 3 decades by the end of this decade, you could say.
Yeah, time doesn't stand still for anybody, but it's just good to see that he's justifying that continued presence, really, and no reason why he shouldn't go on then for 2019. That talk of reassessing after this season, but I think that he still belongs full time as long as he delivers these kind of performances.
Yeah, I guess that's the important thing to consider. Like, you don't want to keep racing or playing professional sport past your use-by date. So as long as he's got that competitive nature still about him and the car under his belt is still strong, then yeah, it's. We could see him going for a 10 years after that, perhaps race into his.
Maybe not till he's 60, but.
Maybe into where he's 50 or something. So who knows? But anyway, you mentioned Tickford before, and they responded this weekend and got a podium on Saturday with Mark Winterbottom. It was a great race from Frosty, apart from the fact that he didn't get past Fabian Coulthard when he should have. That could have potentially put him in contention for the win, but yeah, they played the strategy game and ended up coming out second with a quick car at the end of the race, but then went back to being nowhere on Sunday with none of their cars finishing in the top 10, which was disappointing. They found themselves, all the big names from Saturday, Winterbottom and Mostert and also Cam Waters, they found themselves eliminated in Q1, or I think it was Waters and Winterbottom who were eliminated in Q1, having been forced to do that first round of qualifying, and we'll go over to elimination qualifying in a second. But yeah, Tickford, I guess it was positive to see them on the podium on Saturday, but then, going back to where they were on Sunday, it's just like, well, we need some consistency from you guys, especially when you've got one Ford team out the front, like, setting the world on fire.
Yeah, real flash in the pan stuff, and at a time when I guess they'll be optimistic, being collaborators in the Mustang alongside DJR TP, they really need to uphold that consistency to impress, I guess, Ford now it's back in the game, and that talk of a Mostert, surely DJR there, they would be looking at someone like Mostert there to slide in alongside McLaughlin if Tickford really don't get its act together. That next season will be quite crucial. I think 2019, they need to be back to where they were around that 2013, 14, 15.
Yeah, exactly. They were quite strong when the FGX first came in 2015, and then 2016 it was pretty difficult to defend their driver's title. So yeah, since then they've looked pretty listless, you could say. But going to elimination qualifying, it was good to see that format back in action over the weekend. And then on Sunday for race 12, that's where it proved to deliver the biggest surprises with some of those big scalps. As we said, McLaughlin didn't make it. At the end of the final practice session, he was outside that top 10. Craig Lowndes was outside the top 10. Then we had Winterbottom, we had Waters, and some other big scalps there. So I guess what it's done is it's made qualifying a lot more exciting. It's put more emphasis on that final practice session as well before qualifying. So whether you... and it's pretty unforgiving too, because if you have to go through Q1 to get into the next qualifying sessions, then you've got to use up an extra set of tyres as well. So it's playing the strategic game and a lot of factors to consider, and it's a format that I'd definitely like to see at other circuits as well.
Yeah, unlike, say, in F1 where it butchered it from the start to finish in that very short little window it might have existed, but this time it seems to have got it right in supercars, and just that incentivization there, whether you want to conserve tyres, maybe start somewhere in the midfield, or just take a punt getting it right, coming in and knowing that no one else will best you. It's really one of those games where you just got to intuit and go with your gut, and I think that calls a lot of people out when you see maybe over a few laps they really switch the tyres on, feel comfortable. Other ones thrive in the pressure and the the ones that can't, they're found out pretty quickly.
Yeah, exactly, as we saw then on the Sunday. So, yeah, it was only brought in for Tasmania and for Perth, those small circuits where it's hard to have everyone on track trying to share the same space of real estate. So, if we can see it at other circuits, it would be great to see as well. Just really make qualifying a lot more competitive. So it'll be interesting to see. But the final point to end on, I guess, is the talks of the Chevrolet Camaro and whether that's coming to Australia now with the Ford Mustang on its way for next year. HSV have come out over the weekend and said that they're going to begin assessing the feasibility with General Motors to see whether it would be feasible to have that Camaro car here. So the Camaro road car itself is coming to Australia with HSV, which is owned by the Walkinshaw family, to be doing the conversions to right-hand drive to make it drivable in Australia. But with that, could Walkinshaw, with their partners Andretti and then United Autosports, do a tie-up with GM to race the Camaro whilst the other Holden teams have the Commodore still on hand?
It's looking increasingly likely, and there's no reason why HSV shouldn't pursue this arrangement since being cut loose by Holden. It'd be a great spectacle and a good reference point between the two, and perhaps gives Holden something to think about whether it would want to just have all its teams essentially run under that Chevrolet badge, since they would be given those different monikers there. But whether it would be 2019 or 2020 when the Camaro did enter the sport, it's one of those things that they probably don't want to rush it as much as Mustang. It might seem like they're coming in quickly. It's more to do with the fact that the Falcon we did allude to last week has long seen its day, whereas that latest iteration, so-called Commodore Opel, has just really made its debut.
Yeah, so the Camaro, they could assess how the Mustang fares next season, and then because it's a completely different body type, the coupe two-door thing where they've got to make a lot of adjustments to fit that Supercars control chassis as well. So they'll probably be looking at what Ford do with the Mustang as well as part of its feasibility, and then assess whether it will be right to come into the sport. And it'd be great news for Walkinshaw too and HSV, because it means they become a sort of quasi-factory operation once again, like they were as the factory Holden racing team in the past. Before that, those rights went over to Triple Eight. So seeing a bit of a competition between the Holden or the GM camp as well would be great. Camaro versus Commodore, and then of course GM versus Ford.
Yeah, I think it's just that interim period where Supercars, again, like F1, probably has for a little while not knowing what it wants to do with itself, and we're starting to see the other side of that emerging, and it's exciting times when it does become a reality, whether it's in 12 months or 24. It does look like it knows what it wants to be now long term.
Yeah, exactly. So at least, even if it's just the Mustang and the Commodore that's on the grid, or whatever Nissan do for the future, we've got a bright future ahead for Supercars. But yeah, the fact that they're assessing to bring another car into the competition too is pretty positive to see. So, great stuff there from Perth over the weekend. We also had the World Endurance Championship kick off, the Super Season, which will go from Spa, as we had last weekend, to Le Mans next year. So 24 hours of Le Mans in one season, which will be mouth-watering for the likes of Fernando Alonso, who wants that win there. But, he and his number 8 Toyota crew turned that pole position into his maiden win in the World Endurance Championship. An easy one, you could say it was. The fact that they really didn't have much competition until the end, where that sister Toyota, the number 7 car, which got disqualified from qualifying and then started from the pit lane, came back to finish, but finished second, not too far off the lead car. But the fact that Toyota had made the call for both drivers to hold the formation at the end of the race meant that, they wanted Alonso to win that one and get off to a good start.
Yeah, it seemed as though that life with maybe some competition, but ultimately Toyota looked quite comfortable out the front there, and just a relief for Alonso more than anything, that he's able to see that he's made the right call here, and he should be able to get some satisfaction out of his racing after such a long time.
Well, it's so good to see him smiling again, and I've just forgotten the last time that I saw him on a podium spraying champagne. It was Hungary 2014, the last time he did that, but to to see him genuinely excited and everything and holding the winner's trophy, no matter what. Like, it could be for go-karting for all I care, but just to see Alonso win something after all these years of pain is pretty satisfying, you could say. But had a good race all round the field, actually, with LMP2, the win being taken by G-Drive, and also the Formula E Championship leader Jean-Eric Verne winning that one there. Had a nasty crash, or a couple of nasty crashes actually over the weekend. The big one at Radillon was Pietro Fittipaldi in his LMP1 car during qualifying, just went into the wall pretty hard. He ended up with broken legs and was in hospital, and he's still recovering, so we wish he gets well soon with that. And also Harry Ticknell in the GTE Pro Ford conked out at Eau Rouge. It was a 29G crash that he had, but he claimed after the race that he only was left with a bit of bruising, and that was it. So the GTE car protecting the driver a bit better than the crash that Fittipaldi had. So yeah, that was some of the nasty stuff there. But also GTE, the winners there were the 66 Ford, being Porsche and Ferrari there. They're talking about doing balance of performance again, because Aston Martin, BMW, they weren't as competitive as they would have liked to have been, but I guess that always happens in the GTE class.
Yeah, you can see that there's probably a little bit more room maybe for interpretation when you get down to those lower categories. It's almost the more realistic and human element coming through compared to LMP1, where it's very much comparable to Formula One when you think of those direct comparisons and the specs. So it's good to see that GTE, it's really starting to, with some of those manufacturers entering in recent seasons, not to mention Ford there and Ferrari also being competitive, and now Porsche has scaled back its commitment from the top tier. They're taking it a lot more seriously.
Yeah, so it puts a lot of emphasis on that GT Championship. And then in the GTE AM class, we had the old spec Aston Martin Vantage taking the honours. They were 1-2 in that race. And then some of the highlights, I guess, we have Aussie Matty Campbell, who was in the Enduros last year with Shane Van Gisbergen, and he finished 4th in class with the Porsche. And then Alex Davison, also brother of Will, racing in GTE AM2 for Porsche as well, and he was P7 for the race. So it'll be great to see those guys have a crack at Le Mans and go for the class win. But yeah, that trio of Paul Dall'Anna, Pedro Lamy and Matthias Lauda, I guess they're the masters of GTE AM at this stage, and looking for another win at Le Mans next time out.
Yeah, good tune-up, I guess, for all. You get to Le Mans and it's just like Indy 500, the build-up to it all. There's so much prestige, and so much can happen before the race even starts. So it's hard to really draw too much based on Spa, but I think it's more just the excitement for what Fernando Alonso will do from a purely Formula One perspective.
Yeah, Le Mans going to be that big one to look forward to, and it was actually interesting hearing Alonso talk about this week his regret of not being able to have driven at Le Mans in 2015. You know, that offer that he had on the table for 2015 to drive with Porsche, and then seemingly blocked by the partnership between McLaren and Honda. They didn't want him to race, unfortunately, which was, you know, when you look at the result there, Nico Hülkenberg ended up getting the drive and ended up winning the race on debut as well. So shoulda, coulda, woulda, but at least he gets his chance this year, and then of course next year too, because there'll be 2 Le Mans in this super season for the WEC.
Yeah, you'll take it all very seriously, and yeah, we just hope that he gets a proper run at it.
And there's no clash between races as well. Le Mans not going to clash with Baku or whatever like it has in the past. And of course, the Indy 500 will with Monaco. But Alonso's not doing that this year. So that's wrapping up our World Endurance Championship little segment. But to end the podcast, as always, sporting moment of the week. What's caught your eye? What was your favourite moment across the world of sport?
Probably caught me on the hop here. There probably hasn't been a great deal that has gone on. MotoGP that had some carnival theatrics, you could say, that race, but there was nothing truly riveting about that outcome. But I don't know, Collingwood, another win on the road, and a resilient win with a few injuries. It's always good to get one there, keep the season on course, but hopefully in 7 days' time there'll be something a little bit more exciting to ponder. I don't know if you had anything that really stood out for you these
Oh,
days.
I'm sort of the same, really. I haven't really, even though I've been...
Let's say the Cowboys for you, surely.
Yeah, that was a great win, I guess, on Saturday night against the Panthers out here at Bathurst as well. So a win on the road, and we're playing again tonight with the West Tigers at Leichhardt, which will be an interesting one. So hopefully we can win that. But yeah, no, I'm like you. I've watched a lot of sport over the last 7 days, but nothing really grabbed my attention or shocked me or whatever, or really got me genuinely excited. So hopefully we have a bit more to talk about next week as far as that's concerned. But yeah, MotoGP quickly, Marc Marquez winning that one, and then we had the three-way crash between Pedrosa, Lorenzo, Dovizioso, which could be pretty crucial for Dovizioso being in the championship hunt. So yeah, and apart from that, the Supercars on the weekend, that was about it. So yeah, I guess Spanish Grand Prix is one to look forward to every year. So hopefully we've got plenty to talk about as far as that's concerned, and other news too over the next 7 days.
Yes, so the world turns. Sometimes it's a bit quieter. Other times you have a year's worth of events in a very
oh yeah.
hours.
We need another scandal to happen to talk about. That's for sure. It always seems the case if some kind of scandal happens and everyone's on the heels talking. But anyway, that wraps it up for today's podcast. Thanks for tuning in. We'll join you on the other side of the Spanish Grand Prix, and have a good weekend.